Good morning, everyone. Bishop Bavard, Bishop Elliot Thomas, my brother priests, deacons, fellow religious, dear brothers and sisters in the Lord. It is a great joy for me to be able to visit St. Thomas and to be present to celebrate with you this memorial Mass for our beloved Sister Louis Marie Bryan. I first of all want to tender my condolences to Mario, Angela, Norma, Sheila, to all the nieces and nephews, to the Sisters of Charity, and to all of Sister Louis Marie's dear friends. I am so grateful to Bishop Bavard and Monsignor Jerome for arranging for this trip for me to visit St. Thomas again, and am very embarrassed and sorry that I got sick on Saturday, but thanks to Dr. Al Heath's magic potions, I'm feeling much better and am able to be here at least to preach at this Mass today. In my later years as bishop here in St. Thomas, we were celebrating the 500th anniversary of the arrival of Christopher Columbus to these islands, who on his second voyage actually named these the Virgin Islands in honor of Saint Ursula and the 11,000 virgins. And Governor Alexander Farrelly set up a commission to come up with ideas as to how to mark this important anniversary. And I was asked to be on the commission. Now, there were many wonderful people on this commission, and they did some very creative things. And one of the things that they arranged was to have a U.S. postage stamp commemorative and an Italian postage stamp commemorative of Columbus's landing on St. Croix, published in honor of the anniversary. And when the day came, we had a huge celebration at Columbus Landing. All of the diplomatic corps from the West Indies were present. They had a huge podium and stage, and there were representatives from all of the Virgin Islands were there. A high official in the American Postal Service was there, and a very high official from the Italian Postal Service was there. He had never been to the Caribbean before, and he was overwhelmed by the beauty of the place. And if any of you have been to Columbus Landing, you know how unspoiled it is, the white beach, the palm trees, the blue water. It looked, I'm sure, just as it did when Columbus first arrived. Well, this high official of the Italian Postal Service, who was there to present their stamp commemorating the Columbus landing, took me aside and he said, "Bishop, you have chosen a very beautiful place to be bishop." And I said, "Sir, I haven't chosen anything." I said, "The Holy Father sent me here." He said, "Oh," he said, "the Pope is infallible." Well, unfortunately, the Pope's infallibility doesn't always extend to the naming of bishops. But I must say that I was very, very grateful that the Holy Father sent me to St. Thomas to be your bishop for those years. It was a great joy and a privilege, and my life was enriched so much by so many wonderful people. When I arrived, Bishop Harper, who had been the bishop for 20 years and was the first bishop of the Virgin Islands, received me with Sister Louis Marie. Sister Louis was a very dear friend of Bishop Harper's. And I was so gratified that she received me and helped me with such great generosity and affection. I am delighted that so many young people from the school, St. Peter and Paul's, have joined us here today. I imagine that most of you did not know Sister Louis Marie. I hope that you will all look at her smiling face on this program and realize what a wonderful person she was and how her life enriched the history of these islands. When I first arrived, a very distinguished seminarian drove me around St. Thomas, and when we returned, I said to him, "Elliot, how big is this island?" He said, "Bishop, it's 12 miles long." I said, "I thought it was 60 miles long." Bishop Elliot liked to drive about 5 miles an hour. The first two priests that I ordained here were Father Adalberto Martinez and Father Elliot Thomas, both of whom became wonderful bishops and great blessings for the church. I have so many fond memories of the wonderful times that we spent here, but one of the people that stands out most in my mind is the beautiful Sister Louis Marie. I was able to speak to her a couple of times in her last weeks. She has been in my thoughts and her prayers, and I was happy a couple of years ago when she asked me to write the foreword to the beautiful memoir that she wrote with beautiful pictures. Sister Louis Marie was an extraordinary Virgin Islander. She had a sense of enthusiasm and a sense of wonder that never waned. She loved being a Catholic. Sister Louis Marie loved being a Sister of Charity of Convent Station. She loved being a Virgin Islander. And she loved Our Lady of Perpetual Help. And those loves defined her and defined her life. Just as in all of our lives, we are defined by what we love. Sister Louis became involved in absolutely everything. I see Mary Griffin and the choir here, and they remember how Sister Louis used to sing with them as well. Her radio program, her work with Catholic Charities, the Family Life Bureau, her ecumenical activities. And I was so pleased that she was my chancellor when I was bishop here. She represented the diocese so well. And her PhD in social work from Columbia often came in handy. At one point, we came to realize that we had a very serious problem here in the Virgin Islands. We had the highest infant mortality rate under the American flag. And I called Sister in and we discussed it and talked about what could be done. And we sought funding and set up a program, and I named Sister Louis Marie to be in charge of this program. And in the time that she ran that program, dealing with young women having children out of wedlock on the 3 islands, we went from having the highest infant mortality rate under the U.S. flag to having the lowest. That was the kind of person that Sister Louis Marie was. And everything that she did with such love, such enthusiasm, and such a spirit of service. It was a pleasure to work with her in the many years that I was here, and particularly during those difficult times after Hurricane Hugo, where so much needed to be done. We could always count on Sister Louis Marie. Her work was tireless. Without faith, I know that death can be something very frightening. There was a man who once said, describing the death of his dog, "I had a dog, his name was Rover. When he died all over." But when we die, we don't die all over. Our souls are in the hands of God, and one day shall be raised in a glorious body like Christ. St. Paul says, we know that if our earthly dwelling should be destroyed, we should have a building from God, a dwelling not made by hands, eternal in heaven. We must therefore aspire to please the Lord, whether we are at home or abroad. For we must appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may receive recompense according to what he did in the body, whether good or evil. Our faith teaches us that our action or our inaction have a value unto eternity. The fact that we must render an account of the stewardship of our lives is an incentive for us to use our time well, to make this a better world, to build up a civilization of love. Our faith in the resurrection of Christ is what gives direction to our lives. Each Sunday, we gather here at the Eucharist to celebrate Sunday Mass. Sister Louis Marie found her strength in the Eucharist. It's here that each of us find our strength to live the mission that Jesus has given to all of us. Here the Lord makes a gift of himself to us so that we can find the strength to make a gift of ourselves to God and to one another, to carry out our vocation and the mission that the Lord has given us. In that wonderful parable of Lazarus and the rich man, it's very curious. It's the only parable in the gospel where someone actually has a name. Jesus names one of the characters in the parable Lazarus. In our world, the rich and famous, their names are known and their faces are recognized by everybody. But the poor and the downtrodden are often invisible and anonymous. But for Christ, he sees the poor man, and this is why he gives the poor man a name in the parable. He names him Lazarus. Lazarus is the beggar covered with sores at the porch of a rich man who is eating and drinking and living a grand life. Then both the rich man and the poor man die. The rich man goes to a place of torment, and Lazarus to the bosom of Abraham. The rich man asks Abraham, he says, "Send Lazarus back from the dead to warn his brothers so that they will lead a better life." And Abraham says to the rich man, "Well, your brothers have the Bible. That should be enough for them. They're not going to believe even if someone comes back from the dead." Well, it's very curious that this name Lazarus is the same name of a man who does come back from the dead. The second time the name Lazarus appears, he is the brother of Mary and Martha. Not a fictitious character in a parable, but a real life person. He lived at Bethany. Bethany was a very special place. It was a refuge where Jesus used to go to be with his friends for good food, good conversation, peace and quiet, and the friendship of Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. When Lazarus falls ill, they send a messenger to tell Jesus that his friend is sick. But Jesus tarries along the way and deliberately waits until Lazarus is dead and buried. This is because Jesus wants to perform an even greater miracle for Lazarus. He doesn't want to just cure him of a fever. He wants to raise him from the dead. And he wants to do that miracle for Lazarus, but also for us, for all of us throughout the ages who listen to this gospel, so that we can know that Jesus Christ has conquered sin and death for all of us. The miracles in the Gospels always have two audiences. Those people who were there when Jesus worked the miracle, and the second audience is us. We who listen to the gospel proclaim to us with the message for our lives. The message is one of hope. Like Mary and Martha, we want Jesus to cure our loved ones. But Jesus wants to give us all resurrection and eternal life. Jesus assures us, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if he dies, will live. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Jesus shows that he is the resurrection and the life, calling Lazarus out of the tomb, where his body is already decomposing, to show that this is not a case of suspended animation or a feigned death. The body is decomposing. He is truly dead and now returns to life. In the Gospels, Jesus also raised the daughter of Jairus and the son of the widow in the same way. It was not the definitive resurrection to eternal life that Jesus promises to all of us, but it was a return to their former existence and an indication of the power that Jesus has over life and death. We can only imagine that many years later, Lazarus would die again, run over by a camel, or he choked on an olive pit, or had a heart attack, or however people die. But his coming forth from the grave proclaimed to all that Jesus is the resurrection and the life. The reaction of the people at this gospel is very interesting. Many people came to believe that Jesus was the Messiah, and others, like the Pharisees, wanted to kill Lazarus to destroy the evidence. I think there's a great lesson in that for all of us. Those who accept the gospel and those who live the life of the resurrection will often provoke persecution, opposition, or just ridicule. The liberal press often thinks that anyone advocating the 10 Commandments, especially thou shalt not kill or thou shalt not commit adultery, are dangerous radicals who need to be contained. If we're going to be able to live the life of the resurrection, we need each other. Discipleship is learned like a language, living in a community that speaks that language. We need our family, we need our church, Christ's family, to find the strength and encouragement to live a life that is always countercultural. One of my favorite phrases in this gospel is where Martha says to her sister Mary, "The Master is here and he is calling you." I had those words put above the tabernacle in my chapel. The Master is here and he is calling you. Our Master is the risen Lord. He is calling us to a life of discipleship, a life of faith and service, and at the end of this life, he will call us home to a dwelling not made by hands, eternal in heaven. And he will one day call us forth from the grave to live forever with him. We wait for that day, knowing that he will call forth our beloved sister, Sister Louis Marie Bryan, just as he called Lazarus of Bethany so many years ago. God bless all of you. In our Capuchin constitutions, there was a regulation there saying when the friars preach, whenever they finish, they should leave immediately and return home so as not to undo by their bad example any good they may accomplish by their preaching. And so I will take my leave of you now, but simply before going to thank Bishop Bavard, Father Jerome, and all of you, to say how much I love all of you, and it is such a joy to be here, and to express my love and devotion to Sister Louis, and to say how pleased I am that the children of St. Peter and Paul are here. I hope that there will be another Sister Louis Marie among the young women here, and that many vocations and wonderful Catholics will come out of this community so that you will all be a blessing the way that she was a blessing for all of us. God bless all of you.